FIDE Candidates 2022 round 13 is completed. There's only one round to go. I'm National Master Matt Jensen, and I'm going to walk you through all 4 games today. And then after going through the 4 games, we're going to look at the odds of the players gaining second place in the event. This will matter because if Magnus Carlsen declines playing in the next World Championship, the winner of this year's candidates, Jan Nepomniachtchi, will face off against the second place finisher. So we're going to look at the odds of getting second place after going through the games. So the first game to finish today, we have Timur Radjabov with the white pieces, Fabiano with the black pieces. Keep in mind, both of these guys are still in the hunt for getting that second place finish. So we see D4 by Timur, and Timur's been playing quite a bit of Catalan type setups and double fiend kettles this event. And here we see a Catalan, and I should note, Chess Goals has a Catalan course that's currently 25% off for the rest of the candidates event. So check a link in the description below. We see this early D takes C4, and now bishop to B4 check. And this is sort of like a Bogo Indian structure. Once the bishop checks here and this bishop blocks, those bishops add some interesting dynamics to the position that you don't get in sort of your typical open or closed Catalans. Now we see A5 defending the bishop, queen C2, castle, and queen takes C4. So Timur wins the pawn back. It's interesting now to see, is Fabiano going to play for a win in this position? Does he have something new? Can he surprise Radjabov? You see pawn to B6, bishop takes, and bishop to A6. This is very dynamic play by Fabiano and not very common. Now this queen has to move and the bishop on B4 is attacked. After queen B3 takes, Fabiano has actually sacrificed one pawn. So white has the extra D pawn. There's this nice bishop pointing across the diagonal, and the white king is still sitting on E1. So you can tell here Fabiano looks like he's playing for a win. And now he goes C5. Another super dynamic move. And after D takes C, he doesn't take back right away. He plays knight to C6, attacking the queen. So temporarily down 2 pawns for Fabiano at this point. Queen retreats, and now we see B takes C. Fabi gets 1 pawn back. There is this queen trade possibility for white. And because the white king is still stuck on E1, that imbalance of having the weaker king for white means you should tend to go for the queen trade. And that's what he does here. Queen takes D8, rook takes, knight C3. And now what Timur is trying to do is just limit the counterplay by Fabiano and then try to prove that this extra A pawn is enough to play for the win, because that's going to be a passed A pawn, and passed pawns can make the difference in the endgames. Rook C1 takes, and we see Fabiano playing very actively. He's got 1 rook on the open file, 1 rook attacking the B pawn, half open file. Knight and bishop both well placed, but the pawn on C5 is out there weak. B3 by Timur. If you look at the engine eval, it's saying 0.0 now. So Stockfish is saying there's enough to equalize here. And interestingly, the clocks show Fabiano has 1 hour and 44 minutes to 58 for Timur. So this was all pretty close to Fabiano's prep. He knew these lines going into the round. It's a bit of a surprise for Radjabov, most likely, with 58 minutes on the clock. But we're at move 18, so there's 22 moves left. 58 minutes is still quite a bit of time to finish. Knight to B4, knight D2. Now Fabiano gets the pawn back. Then Radjabov wins the C pawn, and you can tell what's happening. We've seen this time and time again in the candidates. Everything just swaps off instantly, and these players are going towards a draw. It's a 0.0 eval. They finally repeat, and we see a draw. So after the 4 games, we're going to see how this affects the standings and these players' odds of getting second place. Next game to finish, we have Jan Nepomniachtchi, the tournament leader, with Richard Rapport. All Jan needs is a draw in this game to clinch the win for the candidates tournament. But he's facing Richard Rapport, probably the most ambitious player in the event. I don't think Richard Rapport even knows what playing for a draw means. He's playing for the win. So we see a Sicilian, and now this turns into a Richter-Rauser variation. Very dynamic, and oftentimes these can lead to crazy play and higher winning chances for both sides. So Jan's trying to figure out, how can I kill this game and make a draw and end the event 1 round early, knowing that I'm the champ. You will still have to play the last round, but when you already got first place secured, it's a much better feeling, of course. F3, bishop comes back, putting some pressure on D6. If you look at the engine eval, it's 0.3 for white. So Rapport is fighting from behind a little bit. On to D5. Bishop to b4, playing very actively. I like what Rapport is doing here. a3 takes, castle. Now we have this imbalance of the bishop pair versus bishop and knight, and the material is equal. Engine saying 0.2. So it's going to be, can Rapport get some pressure coming against the white king since the kings are castled opposite sides? That's really the best chance to win here. Otherwise, that bishop pair might give Jan some winning chances. Now Jan decides to trade off the bishop pair, but this also secures the queen trade. So now we're in this endgame with one bishop each, two rooks each, same number of pawns, 0.3 eval. And after takes, this is very close to draw territory. The players are going to have to make a big blunder at this point in order to lose this game. We're at move 18, hour and 15 minutes each on the clock. And this game peters out into a draw, so I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. Neither player was really able to make anything exciting happen. There's no way for this rook to infiltrate. All these squares are defended. And now they finally repeat. Draw agreed. So Jan Nepomniachtchi, for the second candidates event in a row, wins first place and in dominant fashion. This was a very impressive candidates by Jan. I think Magnus has to face him. I don't see how Magnus can decline playing against Jan Nepomniachtchi when Jan was so dominant in the candidates. Even though Magnus already destroyed him in the last championship, I think if Magnus ducks this event, it's going to make it look like Magnus is a little bit afraid at least because Jan was so dominant with such a high performance rating. I think it was over 2,900, and you just can't avoid playing him. You have to prove once again that you can beat Jan in the championship. The next game to finish, Ali Reza, who's been struggling against Ding Liren, who's still in the running for second place. So Ding would like to get a win in this one if possible. We see a 4 knights with d4, and this sort of transposes to like a Scotch game in a way. Bishop to b4, bishop to d3, and Ali Reza's playing pretty solid here. Opts for this kind of both kingside castle. This is a well-known position. Both players at an hour and 59. Bishop g5 by Ali Reza and queen f3. No big issues for black, though. Now we see this queen trade fractures black's pawns. But look at the clocks. Both players are definitely still in book. We have a bishop pair advantage for black versus bishop and knight. So that's the imbalance. Bishop pair for black. White has healthier pawns, though, because these are doubled. So is Ali Reza going to be able to come up with anything spicy here? He plays knight to f5 check. This allows the bishop swap. Takes, and look at the clocks. We're still both over an hour and 50 minutes. Now we have opposite colored bishops with rooks each. We've talked about this before. The players know which types of positions lead to draws, and Ding Liren is definitely not playing for the win at this point. He must know that he can hold the draw and be fine, or have some chances at least going into the last round. Because even if Hikaru wins this game, Ding Liren actually faces Hikaru in the last round with the white pieces. So part of Ding's strategy might have been, hey, it's okay to get a draw. Even if Hikaru wins, I face Hikaru with the white pieces. So we do have this imbalance of the passed h-pawn for the passed e-pawn, but the opposite colored bishops tell the story. And really neither side was able to make anything too spicy happen. But then this is kind of a cool moment. So right here, c takes d4 is an option. Rook d1 was played, d3, and now a chess.com brilliant move. Bishop takes d3 check, or bishop takes d3, and after e takes, rook takes d3 check. King e6, c4. This bishop is trapped because if it goes to e1, there's a fork winning the bishop. After the king moves, this rook gets super active, and this is actually just leading to a draw. 0.0 engine eval. Repetition, black can't get out of it. If he goes to h5, there's rook here. It's actually checkmate on the h5 square. So third draw in a row. Can Hikaru make something happen against Jan-Christoph Duda, the second lowest rated player in the event? You see a Sicilian by Duda, aggressive. Najdorf variation with e5. And Hikaru is playing this line with bishop to c4. This is obviously still in his prep. Duda may be a little bit out of prep here. He's spending a bit of time after bishop c4. Takes. So now we get this imbalance with the pawn structure. 3 pawn islands for black, only 2 for white. And knight to g6 played, forking the rook and bishop. So we're getting kind of an interesting position here because there's a lot of pieces on the board and the black king cannot castle. And Stockfish is saying that Hikaru is up with a zero point 0.3 advantage. Kingside castle, knight to c4. Now we see the grandmaster move. Tuck that bishop away to defend the pawn. Keep that in mind. Keep that in your own repertoire of bishop moves. Oftentimes when a knight attacks your bishop, it's good to just put that bishop all the way back on the first rank and you can kick the knight out later. H4 by Hikaru. This is very aggressive. The engine did not like it. It actually liked my move, pawn to b3. Taking that knight back. Let's see what happens. H4, rook c6, queen f3. So what Hikaru is doing is trying to bring all of these pieces over to the king side, right? Can this knight get over there? Can the bishop get over there? Pawn's rushing up the board. And we know this king could not castle. So king f7 by Duda. Now pawn to h5. That's the idea with the h-pawn push. Hikaru wants to fix that knight on the g6 square. Don't allow black to get that knight out of there. Queen c7. And now we see another grandmaster move, knight to d1. And the reason knight d1 is played is because that knight can actually come out to e3, just like we talked about, and try to approach the black king. So this is another good takeaway for your own games. When you're trying to attack the opponent's king, bring as many attackers into the game as you can. If you have pieces on the opposite side of the board, not doing much, bring those towards your opponent's king. The more attackers you have, and that net gain of attackers versus defenders will prove if your attack is enough to win. So now knight to e3 played. Engine says 0.00, but we do see Hikaru applying some pressure, bringing all these pieces around the black king. On to c4. So I think what Hikaru is trying to do here is play b3, create this nice pawn chain, shore up the c file, shore up the queen side, and then continue the king side attack. Now we see a small inaccuracy, knight to f8. Nothing to worry about though. Returned inaccuracy, knight h4, and this is just because the position is very complex. Stockfish is calling a lot of things inaccuracies. All right, there's pawn to b3, securing the pawn chain. Knight g5, kicking the queen. Queen goes back. Hikaru has shown a lot of these nice backward moves. He's just tucking the queen back, but actually this could open up pawn to f4 later on. So now Duda wins a pawn. This is a new imbalance in the position, +1 on the material count for Duda. Could Hikaru actually use that pawn being gone to get the black king more quickly? Bishop to b2. Eyeing this long diagonal, even though there's a pawn here that's protected, if that pawn moves, this bishop opens up. Rook e8, and Hikaru puts that knight right back on g6. Now, it does look like Duda did a good job getting his king back to safety, and the engine confirms this. It's saying a minus 0.1, so very close to equal. So essentially, Duda's up 1 pawn, but Magnus has 1 pawn worth of compensation. That's how we get to this equality. Rook to d1, a5, and now knight to g4, bringing this knight even closer to the black king. The more attackers he can bring towards that black king, the better chance he has for this attack working. Okay, so now what he did was he traded off that queenside knight for a black kingside knight. Rook d2 and rook f to d1. Engine was not in love with this idea, but I think it's a good practical choice. Hikaru really wants to play for the win here, knowing that he has the black pieces against Ding in the last round. He already saw that Ding drew his game, I think, by this point. We're at move 31. And Duda finds the best move. It's a great move according to chess.com. Bishop to g5, secured by the h-pawn, attacking the rook. f4 doesn't appear to be playable because we have both pawn and bishop attacking it. So the rook moves. And now, to my eyes, knight to c5 looks like a juicy move coming up. Pawn to b5, though, played first, trying to infiltrate the rook down to the c2 square, attacking both bishop and queen. Bishop to a3 played, triple attack on this pawn. And here, Duda makes a mistake. He was actually up 1.9 according to Stockfish if he shuts out the bishop with pawn to b4 and then plays e4 and d5 next. So I think Duda knew the idea, d5 and e4, but the move order just wasn't quite right. He should have shut out that bishop first. So d5 played. Now the material's equal and Hikaru does find the strongest move. C takes d because if e takes, rook can simply take back. If that bishop were back on b2 though, there would potentially be a fork. So b4, definite miss by Duda. He was possibly playing for the win there. Rook c2, and kind of a cool move by Hikaru, bishop to d6, little tactical shot, trying to deflect the queen so the rook can be captured. So Duda goes for the queen trade. Now, one thing I'd be afraid of is black. That d pawn could become very dangerous. It's already a passed pawn. It's got two rooks behind it, bishop helping out, covering these dark squares, and this knight lingering in the area. Knight to c5 played, and now d6. Super strong passed pawn. Look at the clocks all of a sudden. We're at move 37. Duda and Hikaru have been spending a lot of time, and Duda especially is in time pressure here. He's down to 6 minutes. That's 6 minutes to make 37, 38, 39, 40. 4 moves in 6 minutes. We've seen it time and time again in this candidates tournament when players are approaching move 40 and they don't have much time. When they don't have the increment, that's where they're making mistakes. And I think that's what's really made this candidates tournament a very exciting event, is players are making mistakes as they approach time control. Knight to d7 played. This was a blunder according to chess.com. Best move is knight takes d3, grabbing the rook. And probably Duda was afraid of d7 and the tactics after that, but there's one move to save the position, rook to a8, defending this square. After rook takes d3, there's a few moves here that are all close to a draw. You can get away with rook takes a2, e4, a4. All of these moves are working, and that bishop helps defend d8. So black can sacrifice the piece back. Like let's say rook takes a2, d8 queen, bishop takes d8, bishop takes d8. It is 2 pieces for a rook. Maybe that's part of what Duda didn't like about this line, but the eval is 0.00. After knight d7, though, we see a 1.5 point advantage for Hikaru. He plays bishop takes a5, rounding up one of those pawns. And what I like about this move is it creates a potential passer on the queen side too if black doesn't take that a2 pawn. So black is pretty much forced to take there. Bishop comes back to b4, securing this pawn. Now we see another mistake by Duda. The best move here is rook to d8 or rook e to a8. And this is complicated. After bishop to d8, though, rook to c3 is a really strong move. The rook is coming in, and this rook is kind of cut off from the queen side. I think that's the biggest issue. But I get what Duda's doing. I think he wants to just play active and pressure f2. So Hikaru runs away from this pawn. That's a good move. King h7, another inaccuracy. Rook takes f2, might have been a little better. King to f7, but this is a tough position to play. King h7, f3. The rook comes back, and now we see rook to c6. So if this knight gets deflected, that pawn is ready to rush up the board. Bishop e3, and Hikaru offers a bishop trade. I think in Hikaru's mind, if those bishops come off, this pawn gets easier to promote. That's the idea, because then there's like rook c7, attacking 2 pieces with this rook ready to help out. Hikaru is trying to offer this bishop trade. They repeat once, and now we see rook c7. If black takes, it brings this pawn 1 square closer to queening. And now look at this endgame play by Hikaru. King h3, and he's just been an endgame expert all event, and then he gets his rook onto c8, threatening rook to h8 checkmate. This shows the power of this idea so long ago, where he pushed that h-pawn all the way up the board to support his knight. It creates back rank mate threats. This is insane. Takes, and now d7. Can't take the pawn back safely because there's rook takes, knight f8 check, winning the rook. So Hikaru wins this game, and he's trying to go on to get second place in the event. Let's look at the results after this game. We got the cross table here. Let me move it over slightly because the names aren't showing. We do have Nepomniachtchi in first place with 9 points. Clear first, no one can catch him. 7.5 for Hikaru. So only Ding-Liren can pass Hikaru. Both Radjabov and Caruana are out of the picture for second place. Reason for that is Hikaru and Ding-Liren play in the next round. So one of them will have at least 8 points, and Radjabov and Caruana can only get up to 7.5 points. So what are the odds with Ding-Liren playing the white pieces against Hikaru? The tiebreak doesn't matter now because they can't end up with the same score. Ding-Liren has to win, and then he leapfrogs Hikaru. Otherwise, Hikaru gets clear second. I've updated these odds. Let's take a look. And what we have here is Ding Liren, I believe, is a 23% has a 23% chance to win the game against Hikaru with the white pieces. Tomorrow we is cannot miss chess. It's July 4th, Independence Day here in the United States. If you're off work, you have to watch tomorrow. What happens between Ding Liren and Hikaru Nakamura? The winner of that game, or if they draw, it goes to Hikaru, will get second place in the candidates and has a decent chance of facing Jan Nepomniachtchi for the World Championship if Magnus declines playing in that. So thanks for watching. Check out the links in the description. All of our courses are 25% off during the candidates, which is almost over. We have a new course player, so you can log into your course from anywhere. You get a login name, check things off as you go. We have bonus content. It's really a great course structure, and you can try it for free. That's the best part. We also have free study plans. So check out chessgoals.com, link in the description. Thanks for watching.